Whenever I need a pick-me-up, I come to this Lebanese restaurant in Islamabad because Lebanese food is fresh, it's healthy, and it's also flavorful. And I always wonder how much better the food must be in Lebanon itself. I've wanted to go to Beirut for years because everyone who's ever been says the same thing, that the food is great, the energy is even better, and Beirut is a city that refuses to behave like one that's been in a constant state of war. Anthony Bourdain went in 2006 to shoot his food show. He described the city as effortlessly cool, gorgeous, mixed up, and endlessly afflicted. He arrived and fell in love immediately, but as he was settling into the city, within 2 days, Israel bombed the airport, and Bourdain watched the city he just started to love get shelled from his hotel window. He was evacuated by US Marines on a Navy ship. He said his heart was broken, but Lebanon stayed with him forever because it inspired him to change the way that he approaches television and his journalism as well, to acknowledge geopolitics and the human realities behind the delicious food. I can't go to Beirut right now either because it's happened again. As the war in Iran erupted a few weeks ago, Lebanon got pulled into it as well. Hezbollah exchanged fire with Israel. Israelis attacked Beirut, and a country that was already recovering from war is now taking even more damage. So instead, I'm sitting here in Islamabad at a Lebanese restaurant and asking a question that deserves a proper answer. That why does Lebanon keep getting dragged into wars? Let's start with a map. Lebanon is tiny. You can drive across it in under 2 hours. It sits on the Mediterranean coast, which means that it's always been a trading hub and a landing point for anyone who wanted a foothold in the Arab world. To its north and east is Syria. To its south is Israel, meaning there is no neutral direction. Every border is complicated. When rockets are fired from southern Lebanon, they can reach northern Israeli cities in minutes. And when Israel responds, by air, by ground, there is no Lebanese hinterland to retreat into. The whole country is exposed, and every regional power knows that. But geography alone doesn't explain this. What makes Lebanon different is what's inside that geography. A political system that was almost designed to make the country ungovernable. In 1920, France carved Lebanon out of what had been Ottoman Syria. They drew borders that mixed together Maronite Christians, Sunni Muslims, Shia Muslims, Druze, Greek Orthodox, at least 18 officially recognized religious communities, into one small country and then left. Feels familiar as a Pakistani. When Lebanon became independent in 1943, its founders made a deal to hold it together. Every major government position would be tied to a specific religion. The president always a Maronite Christian, the prime minister always a Sunni Muslim, the parliament speaker always a Shia Muslim, and this would be proportional to the population based on a census taken in 1932. The problem is that the census froze a moment in time. By the 1970s, the Shia community had almost certainly become Lebanon's largest group, but they still held the weakest political position. The system had no mechanism to update itself, and if you changed it, every sect would lose something. So nobody dared to do anything about it. They called this confessionalism. Here's the consequence of that. When outside powers wanted to influence Lebanon, they didn't need to conquer it. They just needed to find a Lebanese community willing to be their partner. And there was always one available because every community was already looking for a powerful patron to protect it from the others. Now, of all the outside forces that have shaped Lebanon, two are impossible to understand separately: Israel and Hezbollah. Because in a very real sense, Israel created the circumstances for Hezbollah's existence. So when Israel was established in 1948 by occupying Palestinian homes, around 100,000 Palestinian refugees ended up in Lebanon. They settled into camps in the south, and these camps were supposed to be temporary. But then in 1970, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, as in the PLO, was expelled from Jordan after a failed uprising and relocated its armed movement to southern Lebanon. Suddenly, Israel had a new military problem on its northern border. Israel's response in 1978 and again in 1982 was, of course, to invade and occupy. The 1982 invasion went all the way to Beirut and it expelled the PLO. Israel then occupied southern Lebanon for 18 years. It set up a proxy militia to help administer the territory, and during those 18 years, in the Shia villages of the south, the same communities that had already been displaced and marginalized, a new movement was born. That movement was Hezbollah, meaning Party of God. Hezbollah's origins are worth understanding because they're usually simply defined as an Iranian-backed group, which is only partially true. After Israel's 1982 invasion, Iran's government sent its Revolutionary Guards into Lebanon's Bekaa Valley. They found a ready audience among Lebanon's Shia who were angry, displaced, and had no meaningful political representation. Iran provided the ideology, Khomeini's vision of Islamic resistance, as well as the funding, the training, and the weapons. But Hezbollah wasn't just a militia. From the beginning, it built schools, hospitals, social welfare networks in areas where the Lebanese state had provided almost nothing. And that's why a lot of Lebanese Shia still support Hezbollah, because it was the only institution that had ever shown up for them. Hezbollah then fought Israel to a standstill in 2000, forcing a withdrawal after 18 years. And again in 2006 in a 33-day war that devastated Lebanon but ended without a clear Israeli victory. For many Lebanese, not just Shia, that felt like the first time anyone had actually defended them. But here's a question mainstream media barely addresses. What does Israel really want in Lebanon? Since March 2026, Israel's ground invasion has openly targeted control of territory up to the Litani River, an area covering roughly 10% of Lebanon's total land area. With the destruction of 5 main bridges over the Litani, Israel has effectively cut off the geographic lifeline of southern Lebanon from the rest of the country. Now, the Litani River is not an arbitrary military line. It appears in Israeli political discourse going back decades. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, one of the most powerful ministers in Netanyahu's cabinet, has stated that Israel's new international boundary must be the Litani River. That is the sitting cabinet minister openly calling for the annexation of 10% of a neighboring country. That's the Greater Israel Plan summed up, whose boundaries include southern Lebanon as well as Palestine, Jordan, parts of Syria, Iraq, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. And there's one more thing I want to tell you about Lebanon because I'm still thinking about that hummus. So in 2008, Lebanon sued Israel, not over occupation or invasions, but over hummus. An Israeli food company had been marketing hummus as an Israeli dish in Western supermarkets. The Lebanese Association of Industrialists responded with a campaign called Hands Off Our Dishes and petitioned the European Union to grant hummus protected status the same way that French champagne or Greek feta is protected, as an exclusively Lebanese product. Now, this has been a topic of intense debate and nobody actually knows for certain who invented hummus. Apparently, the earliest written recipe is from 13th century Syrian cookbooks. And let's be honest, if you talk to anyone in the Arab world, even outside it, it's very likely that they'll agree to Lebanese origins rather than Israeli. And when it comes to the battle over this ownership, you're not going to believe what happened next. Lebanon and Israel began competing for the Guinness World Record for the largest hummus dish. Lebanon eventually made one that weighed 23,000 pounds, made by 300 cooks, and that record still stands. Here's why I find this beautiful and slightly heartbreaking as well, because no matter how much destruction you cause in this country, it will find the will to mobilize 300 cooks to make the world's largest bowl of hummus, and then win as well. There's something very Lebanese about that. You fight the battles you can fight with the weapons that you have, and you win them decisively. So where does all of this leave Lebanon right now? Let me walk you through what's happened in the last 2 years because it's quite complicated. For almost a year, both sides exchanged fire almost daily across Lebanon's southern border. Then in September 2024, Israel escalated in a way nobody had seen before. On September 17, 2024, thousands of pager devices exploded simultaneously across Lebanon. In supermarkets, in cars, in hospitals, 12 people were killed, including 2 children, and nearly 3,000 were wounded, including Iran's ambassador to Lebanon. Mossad had secretly embedded explosives inside them during manufacturing, and this was done months before they were even delivered. A day later, walkie-talkies exploded. Another 30 people killed. The following week, Israel killed Hassan Nasrallah, the man who had led Hezbollah for over 30 years. In late 2024, after 14 months of exchanges across the southern border, a 60-day ceasefire was brokered by the US and France. The terms: Israel would withdraw from southern Lebanon, Hezbollah would pull back behind the Litani River, the Lebanese army would move in, and everyone declared some version of victory. But there was one condition buried in the agreement that was always going to be a problem: the disarmament of Hezbollah. Over the weeks that followed, more than 3,700 Lebanese were killed. Nearly 1 million people were displaced. The UN called it the largest displacement in Lebanon in decades. Israel did not fully withdraw. It kept its troops at several strategic posts inside Lebanese territory. It then reinvaded sections of the south, seizing more ground. Then, when the US and Israel killed Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei in February 2026, Hezbollah resumed firing into Israel. They said that it was to show solidarity with Iran. In the last 2 months, over 3,000 people have been killed and more than 1 million people have been displaced in Lebanon. Then there were talks of a ceasefire that at first didn't necessarily extend to Lebanon. Eventually, upon the insistence of mediators like Pakistan, just weeks ago, Lebanon and Israel held direct talks in Washington. These were the first direct negotiations between the two countries since 1993, brokered by the Trump administration. Now, on the surface, that sounds like progress. Two countries that have been fighting for decades sitting across a table. But look at what the US State Department actually put on paper. The terms granted Israel the right to self-defense at any time with no equivalent clause for Lebanon. They declared the two countries were no longer at war while Israeli forces were still bombing and occupying Lebanese territory. They asked Lebanon to rein in Hezbollah without requiring Israel to withdraw. Writing in Middle East Eye, Hisham Safieddine, a professor of Middle Eastern history at the University of British Columbia, called these conditions worse than the ceasefire agreed in November 2024. He described them as a surrender of Lebanese sovereignty dressed up as diplomacy. Anthony Bourdain actually went back to Beirut after the 2006 war. He promised that he would, and he said that from the first day I ever arrived in Beirut, it smelled like a place I was going to love. The war didn't change my opinion about the place. If anything, it hardened it. He also wrote something later about what the 2006 experience did to him as a filmmaker and journalist. He said that I came away determined to make television differently. The world was bigger than food, and the stories more confusing, more complex, less satisfying in their resolutions. And I think that's the most honest thing you can say about Lebanon as well, because it's a country that got its borders drawn by France, that built a democracy frozen in the moment of its founding, that became the ground floor of the Saudi-Iran rivalry, that got invaded by Israel, which in doing so created the very resistance movement called Hezbollah, which then later became the justification for more invasions, that absorbed over 1 million Syrian refugees, that had its economy collapse, that had its port blow up, that still has not resolved any of this, but it's still holding up. The stories are confusing and complex because Lebanon has never been allowed to simply exist. But I'll tell you this, I'm still going to go to Beirut when the world lets me.